All right, welcome back, everybody. This is TSSA Talks. This is Brian Johnson. I'm the Director of Player Development for Tennessee State Soccer Association. I'm proud to be coming to you in partnership with Tennessee State Soccer and the Exit In, this great historic venue here in Nashville, Tennessee. They're probably backwards because it's Zoom, but there's some great names on that wall behind me. I was just looking around. I found a friend I grew up with on that wall, Jason and the Scorchers from back in the day. Tom Petty played here. There's been a lot of folks that have come through, and I also enjoy right in my view as I look above the computer screen. There's Chuck Berry, who played here, I guess, last in 1980. So hard to think that was 40 years ago. But a lot of greats have come through here. We're really excited they've partnered with us in this series where we're trying to have conversations to shine a light on underrepresented communities in soccer. And so we're so excited to be joined today by Warren Austin. Warren is our district director of the Northeast District, serving the Tri-Cities area up in northeastern Tennessee. Warren, thank you again for joining us. Really have enjoyed our first two parts of our interview. And here for part three, what I'd like you to do is help us understand what your goals are. What are your dreams for how soccer can be a part of moving the world forward, making life a little bit better here in Tennessee? What do you hope that we can accomplish? What are your goals for Tennessee State Soccer Association for your district as we move forward?
Yeah. For me, I like to see not just in this district, but in across the state and across the U.S. that it would get a little bit more respect when it comes to to media when they're talking sports or having events on television. It's gotten a lot better than it used to be. But it doesn't get the same coverage in the media as other sports does. And so I think if it got better coverage, I think it would help the sport grow more. That's definitely what I'd like to see in this area, the state and across Tennessee. If we look at, we see big spurts of growth at the times of World Cups and Olympics. And I think we see that because it's at the time when our media is covering the sport. ESPN and everyone else they cover Olympics and they heavily cover the World Cup. And so I think that's that patriotism is what draws people to it at that point. And so I'd love to see it get to the point where it is spoken about and talked about more along with the other sports. I think that in my area, and it's probably across the state, we don't always get all the top athletes as well, and I think it hurts us long term when it comes to World Cups and at that level, because in a lot of other countries, it is the sport, and their top athletes a lot of times are playing soccer. We took our top athletes from all of our big sports. Could you imagine what kind of teams that we could put together, with the LeBrons and any of those guys?
It's super exciting to think about what that could be, Warren. And I think we've seen, from areas like yours where there's young men and young ladies who've gone on to play at a high level. I mean, a young man who went on to play as a professional, playing a U17 World Cup, Coy Craft, from just over the line where you grew up in Bristol, Virginia, that came over and played in soccer in Tennessee. Coy went on to play in a U17 World Cup to play as a professional. Those pathways are out there. I guess how, in your mind, what are the things we can do to help to impact that so that those young men and women of talent see an avenue into our game, get a snapshot of our game, and when they come to our game that they feel welcome? What are some of the things you think we can do? What would you like to see us try to do to get better about that?
Yeah, I think one of the detriments to being able to get a big following into the sport is the cost of playing. And nowadays it's very expensive, for a family to play competitive soccer. And it's not just paying coaches, but it's the travel, the hotel costs, the eating out when you're out at a tournament or an event. So I think if we find maybe sponsors or somehow get funding that could help lower the cost, I think we would see potentially more players come into the sport. As far as how would they feel more welcome? I think you have to have people that look like you involved, and I don't think it's intentional that we don't have that. I just think that that is one of the things that helps. I know I served on the board at the YMCA here in sport, and they were talking once about the group exercise classes and how come they don't have a lot of minorities participate in their group exercise. And someone on the board had actually mentioned that, well, you really need instructors who look like them. And once they did that, you started seeing more of the minorities get involved with the group exercise classes. So I think in the sport as well, we have a lot of minorities coaching and helping out. But do you have them at a high enough level that that makes people from other cultures feel comfortable? I know in this in the state we probably don't have as much of the Hispanic community playing the sport for different reasons, cost or language barriers or whatever it may be. And I think those are things that if we could overcome those, it would help grow the sport in my area as well as across the state.
I think the economic barriers are very astute of you to point out. I mean, obviously, this is something you've spent time thinking about, Warren, but it's very true that there is a barrier once kids get to those competitive groups, and those competitive groups aren't always at 11-a-side these days. There's a lot of folks that are doing a lot of traveling at 11U and 12U at 9v9 games. There's a lot of traveling even in the 7-a-side age groups this year. Our 10U, our 9U, they're seeing a lot of expense in a lot of these clubs, and a lot of, they're providing soccer, but it's a cost to do that. How do we find ways to lower those barriers of entry? How do we find ways to get a hold of those kids and help them fall in love with it, regardless of their economic status, regardless of their race, color, creed, religion, country of origin? How do we help them to fall in love with it? Because I do believe that some of our clubs have made an improvement in finding ways to help people of a less advantaged background with scholarships. And I know some of our clubs have huge scholarship budgets and things like that. There's a lot of times there's been a parent who said, hey, I've been blessed, let me help and share. But how can we help to get those kids to that point, still in love with our game, still finding the way to the game, and not pricing them out from the time they start? It's a real challenge. There's no easy answers here, but I think finding sponsorship, like you mentioned, finding ways to help to combat that are ways we can begin to address it or continue to address it. It's being addressed, but it may be not being addressed to the level we'd all like to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to take some big corporations to step up and say they're willing to help out. Because you can see across the sport, like at each level we start to lose players. You have a lot at rec, and then when you get to competitive level, you start to see a drop off, and then when they get to the high school level, you start to see them drop off. And we need to find a way to, once they start, keep them with the sport. And I do believe it's okay to be a multi-sport person, and I think it's also going to take coaches of other sports to be willing to say, during off season, go play soccer. But sometimes you don't see that. They want you dedicated to just their sport, and I don't think realize how well the different sports work together and how you can benefit from the different sports.
There's a few soccer coaches that are guilty of that too out there, Warren, who are also pushing people away from those other sports. It's a really delicate balance we've got. At some point, you probably got to specialize, but that's probably not when you're 11. So
yeah,
I agree with you that finding ways to continue to play multiple sports helps to develop you again as a person too. There's a lot of things about our sport with less, sort of coaching in the moment. In the game, it's kind of up to you to fix it. There's, in recreational soccer, maybe there's a quarter break, but in our 17 or 18-year-old boys and girls that are out playing matches this weekend, they're going to go for 40 or 45 minutes before their coach gets to tell them anything. They've got to really solve those problems for themselves. It's one of the things I love most about our game. But there's something else about, basketball or American football where every 30 seconds you get instructions from the coaches. So, again, I happen to prefer our method, but by the same token, the level and the amount of information you've got to take in and process and then make happen, I think that does help to develop minds in different ways, and we can hopefully all work together because at the end of the day, more than professional soccer players, we're trying to create great people. When I think back to your son's team and some of the great young men that you've had a hand in helping to shape their lives, ultimately that's our goal. At the end of the day, if we can have some great people who come out who are members and leaders of our community who can maybe give back to our game at some point in the future, we'd all be better off.
Yeah, I agree.
Warren, as we wrap up here, this is the end of part 3 of our interview. I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I know you a whole lot better than I knew you a day ago, and I'm excited about that. I'm happy you're on our team. I'm happy you're here to help us drive these conversations forward. I think like anybody else on the staff and on the board, we're not going to see every single thing eye to eye. But at the end of the day, we have our mission, we have our vision, we have our values that we are trying to point towards, that we all do see as a common beacon that we're pushing towards. Is there anything you'd like to leave as a parting thought as we complete this interview and continue these conversations moving forward?
That's probably the toughest question. I guess my parting thought is not only for the board, but just across the state in general, is to everyone to realize our backgrounds are different, but we all have something to offer. No matter how big our district is or how small our district is, each district has something to offer, and we just need to sometimes take our blinders off and realize there's good voices and opinions from every part of the state.
Perhaps somebody told me a long time ago, I got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and perhaps if I'd use them in that proportionality, I might be a little bit better off. As somebody who talks a lot, doing a lot of listening, and that's one of the things I've enjoyed most about our conversation today, is to get to hear you really speak from your heart and talk about the things that are important to you. And I think you do mention a great point. If we could all do a better job of listening to each other, of understanding where people do have strengths and weaknesses, perhaps we could all help move things forward a little bit quicker. And so again, I just want to say from the staff's perspective, from my perspective personally, I appreciate you taking the time. We're happy that you're on our team and helping us to live out this mission and vision and our values every day. A great big thanks again to the folks at Exit In, who are our partners here with Tennessee State Soccer Association in this TSSA Talks. And a final thank you to our guest today, Warren Austin, our Northeast District Director and member of our board of directors. Warren, thanks for what you do in Tennessee soccer. You guys come back and join us for more TSSA Talks.